What's up, guys? This is Jake Mossholder here with Farm Bureau Insurance out in Michigan, Lansing to be specific. But I'm just recording this video tonight because I am constantly still asked about the Michigan no fault that we had back in 2020 when we made that reform. And it's still been 2 years later, and people are still pretty unsure about it and what's different on their auto insurance and where they might be exposed. And this is just kind of to help people understand what those changes were. So, uh, kind of first and foremost, the biggest changes that were made were the car crash victims. And since this legislation will no longer have guaranteed lifetime coverage for medical and rehabilitation expenses unless they specifically purchase that coverage. So before it was guaranteed, now it is not. And so, because of this, all drivers will face increased liability in certain situations for the medical expenses that you could cause to other people. So, since medical bills were taken care of, guaranteed back then, than they are now, you could be on the hook for that since they aren't getting paid out. So it's definitely leaving people more exposed, and hence they need to be more aware of the coverages that are on their policy. Um, so the changes they made it to it specifically was that it's really just giving people more options. So the coverage is still available to people, but now people can select to have a lesser amount of it in order to save money on premium. So it really is five options that are available to the public for their PIP coverage or personal injury protection. Is what it's formally called. But the first option would be the unlimited, no limit option. So this is what we had under the old law. This is something that would last for life. It's an unlimited amount of funds that you would have for covering reasonable expenses incurred for the care, recovery, and rehabilitation of an injured person in an auto accident. So it's my recommendation for people, and it's the state's recommendation. I'd say 95% of my clients have this coverage. I think it's the best value that you can get on there. Last thing you want to worry about if you were in a horrible accident is how am I going to pay for this long term? And having that unlimited amount is definitely something that puts people at ease in that regard. So that's the first option, still the most popular option, even 2 years later. So second option is a half a million. So this covers the same things as the unlimited option, care, rehabilitation, but it's just capped at half a million. So the goal of this obviously is to save money on premium at the expense of medical coverage. So the state mandates that premium reductions be an average of 20% or greater per vehicle. But keep in mind, these premium reductions are not guaranteed. This is just a statewide average. So if everyone chose this amount of coverage, the average would be 20% less than unlimited or or even greater. So you may not get 20%. I've quoted people with this and they didn't get 20%. I've seen some save a little bit more. So it's different individuals might get lucky, some won't. But that's something to keep in mind before selecting half a million in coverage. The third option would be a quarter million. So just like option one and two, it covers the care, rehabilitation, recovery, um, but it's just capped at $250,000. The goal of this is that it's supposed to have an average of 35% of savings per vehicle, but just like the other option, it does not guarantee that you'll get this reduction, that at least that amount. So this is generally going to be the lowest option available to people for most people, but there are two more. But this is yeah, that's just $250,000 in coverage for option three. The fourth option, now this covers 50,000 in coverage, but it's called the PIP Medicaid option. So this one is only available to people who have Medicaid or their spouse or household relatives are on Medicaid. So it's only, yeah. So if you're not on Medicaid, you're not gonna be able to qualify for this. But the goal of this is an average of 45% in savings that are not guaranteed, but that's supposed to be the average of what people save on this option compared to unlimited. And then the last option is opting out completely. So people that can choose this choose not to have any coverage from their auto for the personal injury protection. So, but the stipulation is that you have to be on Medicare Part A and B to qualify for it. There are qualifying health insurance policies that will allow you to do this, but they're narrowly defined in the No Fault Act. Most people aren't going to be able to do that. For most people, quarter million is the lowest they're going to be able to go. But that's something that you'd have to talk to your agent about if your health insurance would allow you to make these changes if you really want to opt out completely. So that's really the changes that were made for the personal injury protection side. It gave people more options. So not everyone just has to have unlimited. So if they really want to save money, they can lower these limits. I'm not someone that recommends it. I have written people with lowers. If they really just need it, they just wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. But otherwise, I just think unlimited's the best unless you got Medicare Part A and B. But with these options that people now have, it's leaving people exposed for liability to medical bills. So they had to make adjustments to the liability coverage on auto policy. So bodily injury coverage is coverage for lawsuit that you might be deemed liable for in the cause of an accident. So you're at fault for an accident, somebody gets hurt, they sue you. Your auto insurance is supposed to pay out for that up to the certain amount that you choose. So before, the state minimum amount was $20,000 per person or $40,000 per accident. That's incredibly low. Most cases are going to pay out more than that. But so now the new state minimum is 250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident. So this is the standard now for every auto policy. This is what's recommended. I recommend more if you can, just based on the chances of uh, the lawsuit being worth more than 250,000 are pretty good, and um, raising your liability limits is fairly inexpensive part of the policy, so it's better to just protect yourself. But um, that's essentially what the changes were on there. Is that the minimum now that most people have is 250, 500. You can opt to have lower limits. You can choose to have 100,000 or 50,000 in coverage, but you have to sign paperwork and opt out of, or I guess opt into having lower coverages, which, as you can tell, I'm not a fan of, especially with these new laws. But that is an option for people. It's just higher liability limits to help protect people on that. I'd recommend trying to get 500,000 overall. That's usually the cap for most companies. Some will do 1 million, including mine, which I try and write people with. But it's also more imperative now to get an umbrella policy than ever before. And I have another video on what an umbrella policy is and why you should have it, especially with the new reforms. Um, so that's what they made the changes on the liability side. And there's some other things that should be into consideration. I think this bill is going to be very if you're a motorcyclist, you would not be a fan of this bill. Basically, your medical benefits, if you were in an accident before, they used to be just match whatever was on your auto policy, but now uh, they are limited to whatever was on the other person's policy. So this could be, I mean, you just have to hope that the right person hits you if heaven forbid you're in an accident, as crazy as that sounds. So um, that's just something that you really need to look out for as a motorcyclist. The same kind of applies to bicyclists and pedestrians. So